Week 9 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few tight ends I looked at on the waiver wire this week. The first guy, Evan Ingram of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've been mentioning Ingram as a pickup over the last few weeks here, and he hasn't disappointed with 9 or more fantasy points, 4 games in a row for this Jaguar team. So right now, Christian Kirk really hasn't done much, and Ingram seems like he's the number one target in the passing game for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. Week 6 in Indianapolis, 5 catches, 40 yards. Week 7 versus the Giants, 4 catches, 67 yards. And Week 8 versus the Broncos in the London ball game, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. So right now available in 57% of fantasy leagues is Ingram. He's got a good matchup in Week 9 versus the Raiders that give up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. Now, if he's out there on your wire, this is definitely the time to go out there and get him. The next guy is Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. I mentioned Conklin for weeks now as a guy to drop, but obviously this could be a fluky ball game where he went for 6 catches, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns is Conklin in the Week 8 loss versus the New England Patriots. But right here, he's a guy you got to mention after putting up a ball game like that, available in 89% of fantasy leagues. Early in the season, 3 games in a row to start the year with Joe Flacco was the quarterback with Wilson out, where he had double-digit fantasy points. And then after the last 3 games where he hasn't done nothing, he broke out once again in Week 8 versus New England. But to be honest, in Week 9 versus Buffalo and that tough defense, he's a tight end I'm not going to have as a start option, most likely, is Conklin. But after coming off a monster ball game like that, I got to recommend him as an ad this week. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think it was a fluky ball game versus the Patriots here. Even though Zach Wilson threw the football more, we know Breece Hall's out for the season, unfortunately, with the torn ACL, and the passing game's got to step it up. And that's what happened in that ball game. But Conklin, I'm not going to buy into it unless we see it a few more weeks in a row. But he's definitely an ad this week. The next guy's Greg Dulcich of the Denver Broncos. So Dulcich, they might have found their tight end over there in Denver. And I know Denver's going on a bye week here in Week 9, but he's still a guy I would recommend. 3 games so far in his NFL career. Double-digit fantasy points in all of them here for Dulcich. Week 6 at the Chargers, 2 catches, 44 yards. A touchdown. Week 7 versus the Jets, 6 catches, 51 yards. And then Week 8 versus Jacksonville in London, 4 catches, 87 yards on 5 targets. So this guy can make plays. Him and Russell Wilson so far have a pretty decent rapport. And right now he's still available in 58% of fantasy leagues, but it probably will be more with bye weeks here. And teams not want to hold 2 tight ends, especially with 6 teams on bye this week. So right here, I'll give Dulcich an ad. And he's a guy that could be available around next week at this time as well. The next tight end's Tanner Hudson of the New York Giants. So we know Daniel Bellinger is going to be out a while with the eye problem and the surgery he's going to need. And Tanner Hudson had a decent ball game in expanded role for the first time here for the Giants. 3 catches, 58 yards on 5 targets. So Daniel Jones, he didn't look good. I know this Giant team going on a bye week as well here in Week 9. But then Week 10, they got Houston. Week 11, Detroit. So some pretty good matchups coming up for them. And I don't think Daniel Bellinger is going to be back any time soon with the eye socket injury. So right now, in deeper leagues, if you need a tight end, or even in 12-team leagues or deeper, I think Tanner Hudson might be a guy who could play a similar type of role like a Daniel Bellinger as he gets more comfortable with Jones and the offense here. And a guy to consider on the wire this week, and the 5th and final tight end I look to get on the waiver wire this week's Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. So we saw flashes of this kid and what he could do here is Likely in an expanded role. But obviously Mark Andrews, the number 1 man over there in Baltimore. We'll see if Andrews is going to miss time. But now with the 10 days off here for this Raven team, they could heal up and get things going. And right now, Isaiah Likely coming off the monster game, like I said, 6 catches, 77 yards in a touchdown at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football in Week 8 here. He's a guy to have on the radar, available in 95% of fantasy leagues. But like I said, if Mark Andrews isn't out, I don't expect Likely to do much. But right now, you got to see how that plays out with Andrews. And he's definitely a tight end to keep an eye on this week. So that's a few tight ends I look to get on the waiver wire here for Week 9 of the fantasy football season.